Most people assume social anxiety is just shyness, something you can push past with enough confidence. Brain imaging tells a very different story. In socially anxious individuals, the amygdala fires with significantly greater intensity, responding to neutral faces as though they were threats. This is not a personality flaw. It is a biological alarm system, and what is really happening beneath the surface goes far deeper than most people realize. Dismissal often arrives in a single phrase, "You're just shy." For many, these words carry an unintended weight. Ava remembers hearing it from teachers, friends, even family. Each time the message was clear. Her discomfort in crowds or classrooms was a minor quirk, nothing more. But beneath the surface, something far more complex was unfolding. Studies show that when social fears are minimized, shame intensifies. People begin to wonder why they can't simply relax, why their nerves refuse to settle when others seem unfazed. This internalization does not encourage confidence. It suppresses help-seeking. In fact, surveys indicate that those who are told their anxiety is just shyness are less likely to pursue support, often waiting years before reaching out to a professional. Meanwhile, the brain reacts with a speed and force invisible to the outside world. When a socially anxious person enters a situation where they might be judged, such as a meeting, a party, or even a brief introduction, the amygdala surges into action. Functional MRI scans reveal a spike in bold signal, with the amygdala firing about 0.35 units higher than in people without social anxiety. This difference is not subtle. It means that the brain's alarm system is primed to treat neutral faces or casual glances as potential threats, flooding the body with stress hormones before a word is even spoken. Neuroscientists explain that this heightened response is not a failure of willpower. It is a neural reflex, shaped by both genetics and experience, and it sets the stage for hyper-awareness in social settings. The cost of dismissal, then, is twofold. It amplifies shame and leaves the underlying biological alarm unaddressed. For many, the cycle of minimization and internal alarm becomes a barrier to understanding and to relief. Ava enters a room and her gaze snaps to the faces around her. Eye-tracking studies reveal this pattern. The first fixation lands on any sign of anger or disapproval, even if the expression is fleeting or ambiguous. Within a fraction of a second, her eyes dart away, skimming past faces, avoiding direct contact. This sequence, hypervigilance followed by avoidance, plays out in nearly every social situation for people with high social anxiety. The mind is primed to scan for threat, but once it detects even a hint, it recoils, trying to minimize exposure. In these moments, perception itself begins to warp. Ambiguous cues, a neutral glance, a half smile, a pause in conversation, are filtered through a lens of suspicion. Research shows that individuals with elevated social anxiety consistently interpret these unclear signals as negative. In controlled experiments, when presented with scenarios that could be read as friendly or critical, those with high anxiety ratings overwhelmingly choose the critical interpretation. The mind starts to read intentions, often assigning judgment or rejection where none was meant. Ava describes the process as a silent guessing game. She looked away. Does that mean she's bored? Am I talking too much? This mental script runs in the background, coloring every interaction. The threat signal does not just heighten alertness, it reshapes the very meaning of what is seen and heard, turning ordinary moments into sources of doubt and unease. Ava feels the heat rising in her cheeks, the pulse in her neck quickening. She wonders if anyone else notices. For people with social anxiety, these bodily changes are not just background noise, they become evidence. Research on interoception shows that even a mild surge in heart rate, as little as 10 beats per minute above baseline, is often misread as a visible tremor or a sign of unraveling. In the laboratory, the Trier social stress test reliably triggers these reactions: heart pounding, palms damp, breath catching. Participants report a sense of exposure, convinced that their embarrassment is on display, even when observers see nothing out of the ordinary. The mind latches onto these signals, amplifying them. Experiments with false biofeedback reveal the power of this loop. When people are told, falsely, that their heart rate is spiking, they report greater shame and a stronger urge to shrink away, regardless of their actual physiology. The belief that one's body is betraying them becomes self-fulfilling, drawing attention inward and feeding the anxiety. This internal monitoring creates a feedback circuit. The more Ava notices her symptoms, the more intense they feel, and the more certain she becomes that others can see her discomfort. In everyday situations, a flush or a skipped heartbeat is enough to make someone like Ava withdraw. Convinced that her anxiety is obvious, the scientific picture is clear. For those with social anxiety, mild bodily arousal is not just a private experience. It is interpreted as public proof of failure. Each sensation becomes a cue for shame, setting the stage for the silent aftermath of rumination that follows. Ava leaves the meeting, but the experience lingers. What unfolds next is not relief, but the slow onset of a mental replay, an internal review that can last far longer than the interaction itself. This is post-event processing, or PEP. For people with social anxiety, PEP is not a brief reflection. It is a loop that runs, on average, between 8 and 12 minutes after even minor social exchanges. In these moments, the mind turns into its own audience, scrutinizing every word, gesture, and pause. The cognitive load is heavy. Instead of moving on, Ava's attention is pulled inward. She pictures herself from the outside, imagining how she appeared. Did her voice tremble? Did she speak too quickly? Was her answer awkward? Research using experience sampling methods finds that the intensity of this self-focused replay is closely tied to the severity of social anxiety, with a correlation of about WAR equals 0.45. The more vivid and persistent the negative imagery, the more entrenched the anxiety becomes. This inner observer is relentless. It freezes single moments, a stumble over a word, a glance that seemed dismissive, and plays them back in slow motion. Each replay is colored by the belief that others noticed, judged, and remembered every flaw. The mind fills the silence left by others with imagined criticism, and the event stretches far beyond its actual duration. The sense of being watched does not end when the meeting is over. It is recreated, minute by minute, in the privacy of thought. For Ava, the aftermath of a social encounter can feel more exhausting than the event itself. The spiral of analysis and self-critique is not a conscious choice, but a reflex shaped by the brain's drive to avoid future humiliation. In this way, ordinary moments are extended, magnified, and transformed into internal trials, leaving little room for rest before the next encounter begins. Ava sits across from a friend in a cafe. The conversation stalls for a moment. Her mind fills the silence with imagined criticism. Research shows people with social anxiety often see these pauses as signs of disapproval, even when nothing is wrong. In groups, Ava feels exposed, convinced everyone is watching her every move. Studies reveal those with high social anxiety overestimate how much attention others pay to them by about 30%, magnifying embarrassment and making small gatherings feel like stages. When speaking in public, adrenaline does not sharpen her focus, it tips into panic. Her heart races, hands tremble, and she clings to notes or rushes through sentences, seeking comfort in habits that only reinforce her fear. Even texting brings unease. A delayed reply or a seen notification sparks worry. Research finds that people with social anxiety interpret neutral pauses as negative and experience real spikes in stress. Everyday moments become minefields, shaped by the mind's anticipation of judgment. Safety behaviors become a private toolkit for navigating social risk. Ava's list is familiar to anyone who has lived with social anxiety, rehearsing answers under her breath, keeping her phone in hand as a shield, avoiding eye contact, sticking close to exits. Each action brings a brief sense of relief, a momentary escape from the threat of embarrassment. But research shows that this relief is a double-edged sword. The immediate comfort from avoidance acts as negative reinforcement, preventing the mind from learning that feared outcomes rarely materialize. A 2026 mediation study confirmed that the more someone relies on avoidance, the more persistent their anxiety becomes over time. In a small experiment, Ava predicts that if she asks a question in a group, she'll be judged or ignored. Heart pounding, she forces herself to speak up, just once. The moment passes without incident. No one laughs, no one recoils. Later, when asked to rate how awkward she seemed, Ava's score is far below the ratings given by neutral observers. This gap is consistent across studies. People with social anxiety routinely judge themselves much more harshly than others do. The mismatch between internal expectation and external reality is striking, and it is in these moments, when a feared action leads to a benign outcome, that the first cracks appear in the anxiety loop. Right now, millions navigate social situations with an invisible battle most never see. As conversations around mental health grow, understanding these hidden processes matters more than ever. Compassion isn't just kindness, it's evidence-based support. The next time you notice someone withdraw, remember, what is hidden can be just as real as what is seen.